Resilience has become a buzzword in recent years. For individuals generally, for managers and business leaders, and for the organisations they work in. And right now, in the middle of this global coronavirus pandemic, our emotional and mental health is being tested to the limit, as is our social well-being when we're socially distancing and isolating, or what I like to call it, cocooning. It's so important right now for each of us to understand and model resilience through our own personal practice as well as through organisational leadership. So what do we mean by resilience? And how do we develop our own and our staff's levels of resilience, especially now? How do we move towards a happier, more engaged and less stressed workforce and a more sustainable organisation going forward? Let's start with the concept of resilience. My dictionary defines resilience as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, or the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape. Personally, I love Anne Menston, she's a developmental psychologist, her definition of it as ordinary magic, meaning it's ordinary, not extraordinary. People commonly demonstrate it. Think of any large group of people who've suffered a tragedy or misfortune and how they're able to rebuild their lives and think about the situation we find ourselves in right now. Resilience is rarely the result of something particularly earth-shattering happening. It's ordinary, everyday stuff, like paying more attention to what you're thinking or feeling or looking after yourself. And this can and does lead to increased feelings of well-being, that's the magic, even in times of forced change like we're in now. There are different approaches to individual and organisational resilience, and my focus in this video is on you as an individual. So how do you develop your resilience and be a role model for others? It starts with understanding what resilience is and then getting clear on why it's important. I believe we're naturally resilient. When we're babies, we learn to walk and talk through constant trial and error, setbacks and challenges, yet we keep going with support from adults. We bounce back repeatedly. And at that age, we don't make the setbacks mean anything about us. However, as we grow and encounter certain events and people in our lives, we often start to attach negative meanings about ourselves to these encounters. If you were to reflect on your own thoughts and expectations right now, on what you've been saying about the pandemic and your situation, what you've been making it mean about you, I've heard things like, I'm not good with change at the best of times, but this, my business isn't going to survive this, I just can't get motivated, or it's okay for those businesses or those people. And really what we're believing when we say these things is, I'm not going to get through this. I'm not good enough or don't know enough or I'm not lucky enough and not in the right industry or in some way I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Or I'm just scatterbrained or useless in a crisis or I can't cope. These negative meanings lead to habitual thought patterns, beliefs and expectations. And these in turn dictate our behaviour and our actions, whether we're conscious of this or not. Think about what you've been doing or not doing in the past week or so. The good news is if we can learn these types of thought patterns and beliefs, then we can also unlearn them. We can return to a more resilient way of being. So feeling and being resilient allows you to cope with whatever life throws at you. It allows you to be buffeted yet stand firm like the oak tree. Resilience stems from a knowing that you're really okay no matter what. It helps you focus on the here and now as a way of not only dealing with what's happening in the moment, but also actively creating a better future for yourself. So I have a question for you. Where do you think you are right now in terms of your own level of resilience? If you're not certain or you're not happy with the answer and you know you want to develop your resilience, I have 3 recommendations for you. Number 1. Know the bigger picture, your purpose, vision or intention for your life and work. When you have clarity over why you're doing what you're doing, the work, your family and social commitments, over what's most important to you, over where and how you fit within the overall scheme of things, within your organisation, its mission and goals, over your contribution and impact, your specific goals and targets, once you recognise this and you acknowledge this, and you understand how to measure or how others will measure it, once you recognise the support that's available to you, all of those will mean that you're developing your resilience. So some reflections, some questions for you to answer. Where am I unclear about my work right now? About why I'm doing what I'm doing in and outside of work? Who or what will help me gain clarity? Who can support me? Number 2, explore what stresses you, your stressors and the points at which you get triggered. There's always going to be challenges, antsy bosses, colleagues, clients, too much to do, not enough time. In fact, now for many, there may be too much time and you're not doing what you've always said you would do when you had the time. This in itself might be stressing you. So when you understand what triggers and stresses you and you learn coping strategies to deal with them, you develop your resilience. Some reflections for point 2. What do I generally get stressed about at home and at work? What about now? What's causing me the most stress during this pandemic? And how am I coping with this? Then think about what's worked well in the past, what's maybe not worked as well, what might work better. So, for example, things like deep breathing, counting to 10, imagining a good outcome when you have that encounter with somebody that you think is going to cause you stress. And then what action will you take on these? Will you be able to take on these? So, for example, you may want to reduce your hours, take more breaks, so maybe setting an alert on your phone or establishing some kind of short and simple routine of deep breathing and that imagining that positive interaction. Third recommendation is to pay attention to what you think, feel, say and do when you're stressed, overwhelmed or simply frustrated. So be a curious observer rather than a judgmental critic. Notice that inner voice and whether it's positive or negative, helpful or unhelpful most of the time. So again, some reflections, some questions for you. How do I generally talk, think and feel about stress and overwhelm? What words do I use? How do they make me feel? How do I usually respond to misfortune, to problems, challenges or the unexpected? And what about now with this new coronavirus playing havoc with our usual routines and our usual ways of living and working? And maybe what's been going on for me as I've been listening to this. So what were my thoughts and feelings as I listened and watched? I personally would love to know your thoughts on this and whether it's been helpful in thinking about how resilient you currently are and what you can do to develop your resilience and become a better role model for others, your family, team, colleagues, clients and community. So please do let me know.